So, I mean, talent is an interesting topic, isn't it? And that's our topic of the month. We try to theme things. And actually, incidentally, next month, we're going to look about learning and theme it all around learning. If we were to discuss this term talent, because I think it has some nuances to it, doesn't it? What would you say? How is talent defined in your organisation? I'll just have a little read and see if there's any other ideas as to what people might want to from today. So what leadership skills are suited today, Skip says. I'm going to say flip up here. Duncan from Sheffield, that's where I was born. So tell me in the chat, guys, what does talent mean to you in your organisation? Let's see what you're saying. There's going to be recordings, absolutely. We always record the session and we will send out the slides and a link to the recording later on as well. So don't worry, that's all going to happen automatically. And any links that we talk about. I've got Zambia. Zambia is my furthest away so far. So is anyone telling me what's about? Thank you, Stephanie. So we've got here experts, skills, people who are experts in respective fields. Colin's saying it's about aptitude or competence aligned with motivation and potential. So that would link in terms of if you were looking at maybe specific grids. Stephanie's saying employees with performance potential. Yeah, Mark, I think that's a good question there. Is it inclusive or exclusive, which is one of the things there. Diane, I like that. So two things. One is our people. So you're having an inclusive definition there. And the second one is more high performers. Skills is about high skill individuals, says Fiona. The whole employee population, people with natural abilities, all staff like it. Okay, great. All right, I'll have to move on to the slides, but that's really interesting in terms of what we've got there. So we'll go into more on this. For some reason, I've put my introductory slides back to front here. I think you know who I am, so I'll put this at the end. So Lucinda, this will come out of the slides. If you don't know me, then this is my introduction. And also, I'll just briefly introduce where we come from in terms of this. So my background is I'm a child psychologist and also L&D, but I also host a podcast, the HR Uprising, which I think many of you have come across, and I will be doing corresponding podcasts on these topics as well. So if you want to know more and refer back to something in an auditory sense, you'll be able to do that. This is a new slide in terms of what we're covering here. So just in terms of explaining who we are, because someone asked me recently, said, oh, they know me for the HR Uprising, but they didn't know what Actus was. So just a brief introduction as to what Actus does. We like to think of ourselves as a complete performance learning and talent suite. So we have software, which is a performance management software. We have talent management, hence our focusing on talent management, which you can use to support managing talent. And you can see here, we also have a learning management platform, 360, and a range of other functionalities. I also run a lot of training, open training programs, and been doing lots of that, What's Change Superhero session running at the moment, and Virtual Manager. And we've also got on-demand e-learning and various management LMS and online LMS and e-learning courses. So if you want to know anything about any of those, do look at the links that's going to come through, because I realised that I've been running these webinars for about a year, and people didn't really know what Actus was. So look us up at some point, and actually if anybody is interested in seeing the system, we will be running an open webinar tomorrow, and there'll be details on that later on that will be dropped into the chat. So anyway, sorry about that. Somehow I've muddled my slides all around. I'm going to blame it on my rash. So we've talked about what talent is. It's quite a nice little introduction. And the agenda for the session is actually, what do we even mean by talent management? So as you're saying here, or I asked you earlier, is it about potential? Is it about everybody having talent? Yeah, so Angela's saying, doesn't everybody have talent? We just need to find it. Is it about the next need in a career path? So there's loads and loads of ways in which you can define talent. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look a little bit at the jargon buster. And actually, I'm not going to go through that in loads of detail, because we've got a white paper on that, which we'll send out to you, or you can access if you want to really look at some of the jargon around it. I'll briefly look at how we could develop a talent management strategy and link into career pathways. And I realised that actually, if career pathways is something that you're particularly interested in, because somebody actually contacted me and said they'd like to see a podcast on that, I am going to cover that in a podcast coming up, and I will do more on that on the webinar that I'm going to do in May on learning, because it seems to be quite a hot topic at the moment. So that will follow on from this webinar if this is something that you're interested in. So I've asked you what talent is, and then moving on from that, let's actually formalize that question. So you're giving me lots of different interpretations of the word talent. So why don't we poll it and see, if we were going to go for one of those options, what would you say? And this is not necessarily your own, but it's in your organization. So would talent be considered as a very select 5 or 10% of the employees based on the population? Would it be various pockets of people based on key skills, which some of you said that? Or would it be everybody? Is it about identifying everyone there? So let's just release the poll and get you to think, which would you go for? And I think this is, you've just got to choose one. So I'm opting for getting one of them. And it may be that you choose one as to how it's viewed in your organization, but actually you think it should be different. And I think that's something that I remember having that challenge myself when I worked at Siemens. So we talk about talent planning and talent pools and things like that. And it seemed like it got a bit elitist. And that has pros and cons. So it's just an interesting way in which we can consider these. So just give you a moment to vote. We've got nearly 150 people on the call. So that's why I just have to keep letting people in and let everybody vote. 72% have voted. So I'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2. Let's see if we can get it to 80% of votes. Let's see what would be considered as talent. Handful more people want to vote. 77%. Creeping up. When it gets to 8%, I'll stop it. There we go. All right, final votes. I'm going to give you 3 seconds. And let's end the polling and see what you thought. So share the results. So who's considered as talent in your organization? So 20% of people feel that a very select 5 or 10%, and that was definitely the organization that I worked in. However, I don't know whether that's certain types of organizations see it. They also did have a view about key skills, particularly skills that were really in demand were there. But 60% of us feel that it should be about everybody identifying key skills and getting the most out of them. And there's quite a lot of people now looking at strengths and talking about the strengths-based organization. I've seen somebody who's written a book on the strengths-based organization that I had on the podcast recently, which I think is a really nice angle. And perhaps if that's us as talent specialists, which I know some of you are, then it's really about how can we identify those skills and get them to be utilized fully in the organization. So I think as many of you are saying, that the challenge that we have with the term talent, it can be a bit elitist. The other challenge is that often organizations don't really know what talent looks like. They like the idea of it, but when I say looks like, you don't know how to define or identify it. So do we look at specific skills? Is it people who are high performers? I mean, for example, we talk about talent, recruiting talent, but the proportion of people who are brought into organizations as talent does not always correlate with whether or not they end up being high performers. So there must be more to it than having just the innate skills. It's also about whether you find people the right role and the right position in the organization. And that links into the fact that talent can be situational. So, you know, I might be amazing if I'm working with a team of people who complement my strengths. But if you put me into an area where I don't have any strengths, I'm not working with the right people, then actually I'm average or not useless. The risk of talent as well, I think it can be when it is the 5 or 10%, that is a risk there that it can be demotivational. Because if you've just got a small bunch of people who are sitting in a talent pool, then it can be a bit demotivational to that 90% of people who are everybody else, which is of course the majority. So it's an interesting one there. As I said before, talent doesn't automatically correlate with performance. And my concern is that sometimes people, especially if you think about what happens on things like graduate schemes, one of the issues there is that talent management, it can make organizations a bit lazy or even people lazy, because people become labeled as being high potential, something like that. Let's say they go on a high potential training scheme, they get lots of love and attention and development, but then they have to go into an average job. You know, they expect therefore maybe to be the next MD, but you don't necessarily realize how much work there is in going forwards to get there. So it actually can be something that it's a label which is very much used widely as in HR, as you would all be aware. But actually, is it a great label? I haven't come up with a better one. If we've got better ones, I don't know. But maybe it is about everybody. If we see it in this inclusive way, then we've all got a responsibility to perform and deliver against our strengths and get into roles where we're able to deliver. And there's so much jargon, isn't there? And that's one of the things here. So in terms of the talent management terminology, that's when we're looking at things that link to this. So if you're having to do something on talent management, maybe you're working on talent profiles. In fact, as you look at this Wordle here, which of these would actually be things that you're working on at the moment? If you're thinking about your talent management strategy and succession planning, are you trying to do a succession plan? Are you trying to build job families? Is it about development that you're trying to achieve here? Is it about trying to define the technical competency to put people into some sort of career path? So which of these areas here are challenges for you that you're having to do? Maybe you've got to put through some sort of internal recruitment. So you're doing assessment for development centres. It does all link together, but it can feel quite disparate. And that's one of the things that I think that we can get quite challenged with. So what I find is the best way to start when we are saying, okay, my responsibility is to put in place a talent management strategy, is to start with, why are we doing it? What is the purpose for our particular business? Because it might vary. So if you were thinking about talent management in your organization, what might it be? What might the purpose be in your organization? I'm just having a look at some of the comments here. Manuel is saying that not all talents are created equal, I think is what you're saying there, isn't it, Manuela? So it's not always about technical ability, but in some organizations, we might be focusing in on that technical ability. So Valeria, you're doing job rotation. So that's an interesting one, is because actually that links to onboarding. How can you make sure that you get, you can rotate somebody into a different part of the business, but they therefore actually need to be onboarded into that other part of the business. So is the business ready to do that? Succession planning, you're managing, Laura, to have the right people in the right place at the right time. Yeah, that would be marvelous, isn't it? Succession planning and recruitment, so linking those all together. So making sure you recruit the right people in, develop them up, get them on the succession plan. So retention, saying here, Hannah, getting the message out for everybody. That's okay. I'll just keep those coming through. So those are some of the reasons that you are coming into here. And actually, I don't know whether all of those are reflected in my next slide, because there's quite a lot of you saying that getting people into the right fit for the right job. So these are some of the drivers that often sit behind a talent management strategy. They do feed each other. So you might have a talent management strategy which is about getting productivity or profitability. So it's actually about getting the right people. I guess this is the right people into the right roles so that they are the most productive. So it's about making sure that your organization is really highly streamlined and effective so that you can be productive and profitable and deliver on it. So that's why you might be, it's all about, seamless delivery and productivity. It might be, obviously, in fairness, everything probably links into that productivity and profitability. It might be that you are wanting to focus on retention of key people or skills. Now, there's a difference between that and internal development of key skills. They are both similar. You'd have a similar solution to them, but the retention one might be because you are, let's say that you work in a specific environment and your technology has moved on. And so actually you've got lots of people, you've got lots of people who are retiring who've got very specialist skills, and you've got lots of new people coming in who don't have those skills. So actually, if you lose those people with the specialist skills, then you have a big knowledge gap in your organization. So you might want to retain those kind of people. Or it might be that a key competitor is poaching people with specific skills. So retaining those key skills, which are very expensive or difficult to train up, might be something that you're really focusing on. So you might have a talent management strategy which is about retention. On the other hand, it might be about internal growth. So you can see that there are skills that are quite hard or expensive to buy in and recruitment. So you want to be able to grow your own talent. So then it's more of a development of talent or key skills. So you're about finding people with the right traits and developing them. It might be talent management is about a general engagement or motivation. So that's about making sure that everybody feels that they've got the opportunity to develop and grow in their organization. It means that they feel that they are able to perform, they feel they're a really good fit for the job. And if you think about typical engagement surveys, one of the first questions is making sure that you feel that you fit within the organization. It's usually in the top 10, feeling you're a really good fit for the organization. And the other one is having opportunities to learn and grow. So talent management to me is intrinsically linked with development, but it's about specific and focused development in line with the direction that people want to go in, as opposed to, you know, just development for a specific task or a specific bit of knowledge. So it's much more of a strategic development focus. It might be that your organization, it's all about reputation. You want to make sure that you are able to attract the best talent. So reputation is a key focus for you, or it might be about cultural aspirations. You want to be seen as having a growth culture, a learning culture. So those are potential drivers of strategy. Forgive me if I haven't covered one that actually is yours, and you can choose more than one option here. So let's just put another poll up and see which do you think are the right driver or drivers, or the most relevant drivers in your organization for talent management at the moment. Let's see what you think. And tell me in the chat if I've missed something that you can't fit into one of those categories, or if you're wedging your strategy in here, then do put it in the chat again and tell us why it's not quite right. Yeah, so Skip, you're doing succession planning suitable for growth. That's, yeah, so strategic talent management, that's a really good one. I wonder whether that's potentially, yeah, whether maybe which one you'd section that into, because what you're saying there is you can see that the organization needs to change for the future. So maybe it's cultural aspirations and we need different skills in there. So we need to develop talent to be ready to take advantage of that specific opportunity. Is it single selection, Duncan? Sorry, I thought we'd made it multi-selection on that one. Sorry, so you've had to go for one. Okay, so everyone had a chance to go for one? Apologies, I meant that to be multiple. So succession planning and developing. Useful, Rebecca. Okay, I've got a slide that might be useful there. All right, 72%, and we're going to get up to 80% again. Just final choice, choose one. If it doesn't quite fit, let us know why it doesn't quite fit or why you've chosen that, because it's, you know, it's always having to second guess the options here, aren't we? Combination of several, Lisa. And actually that makes total sense. The key here is knowing why you're doing it means that you can think about how you're going to apply it. So what I'll do is I'll just share the poll results on this one for you. So we can see actually retention is a really key one in internal development. So that does link to it being mainly development and getting the right development against it. It's also about having the right engagement, motivation, and making people productive. And multiple options would make total sense for many of us in there. So the sort of questions that we might want to ask ourselves when we're thinking about how to focus, because ultimately with talent management, although we should view everybody as talent, you can't boil the ocean. So you can't necessarily have something perfect for everybody. You've got to start somewhere. So where I would start is by saying, first of all, which roles or positions are essential to either business survival or delivering on the strategy. So some of the ones there I was saying in terms of our overall profitability or our vision for the business. So which are those key roles that are going to make all the difference or are high risk if we lose them? And that's links into that second one, which is, do we have some roles that require highly specialized knowledge or skills that is difficult or expensive to recruit into or replace? So again, those would be key ones that we need to focus on retaining and developing. Thirdly, and then thirdly, are there key individuals? Sometimes this is the other way around. So those two are kind of general strategic ones where you look at the roles, but sometimes you'll find that there are some key individuals in your business that just have unique knowledge or experience of technology, products, or customers that would be really hard to replace. And those are the ones where you need to think about a succession plan, right, for them. So you might succession plan for all of these, and you might do more talent management for 1 and 2, but then 3 is where you might, typically organizations go on their succession plan. They look at their board or their exco members and just go, right, we're just going to succession plan for those. But that can be a little bit narrow thinking, because sometimes you find that there are people that, you say there's a massive gap in your organization. They might be a standalone, but they have all of that knowledge. And if you lose them, so maybe you need to have succession or some sort of risk management on those as well. If you're trying to put together an aligned talent management strategy, well, it's kind of common sense, as many of these are, but start by thinking, what is the business need? Always start by what's our business need? So our retention piece, what are those specific skills that we're trying to retain, or specific skills gaps we've got? Think about how we can address those in our short or medium and long term, because actually sometimes they are different, and we have to make sure that we balance our strategic and tactical needs there. So we might put some tactical stuff in, but also make sure for the longer term we're going to motivate people, and that is going to link into things like career paths. Make sure we understand the skills and experience requirements that are required for them, put in place our developmental career paths, and then align the training and development with them, and then monitor the effect. So the key is, if we were looking for retention, if we put something in place, our succession management strategy, we need to see whether it's actually hitting the mark. Is it doing what we want it to do? So that's really, really common sense. But the interesting thing is, quite often when I work with organizations that perhaps are just trying to do talent management, they just do steps 2, 3, and 4. They haven't actually thought very clearly about what the need is, and they don't always evaluate at the end whether it's doing what they need it to. Some networking going on here, which is lovely to see in the chat. So it's great to see people joining in networking here. Okay, so then if you think, one of the ways in which I want to address this is, I'm going to put in place something like a career progression pathway. And I think these are useful, and you can put them in even in smaller businesses, but they do have some reservations. So you need to think about it. It's not the be all and end all. One of the challenges, if you do put something in with a career pathway, and by a career pathway, I'm talking about, and I'll give you an example in a moment, where you might take people from a specific expert through to a specialist in something, through junior to senior, through a series of stages, and you formalize them. The issue with that is, if you bring people into the organization, then they can start to have very high expectations about the pace at which they would go up that pathway, or the fact that they will definitely go up that pathway. One of the things to bear in mind is many businesses only have career pathways in place when it comes to people management. And that's one of the biggest risks, I think, because not everybody is born a people manager. We do find that not everyone has the people gene. And if you look in highly technical environments, let's say engineering firms, science people in labs and things like that, quite often they are amazing at what they do. But they feel like the only way they can progress is by going into the people management route. If you have that problem, then that is a good reason to think about doing some sort of talent management or career pathway for those specialist subjects. And then that way you're not forcing people who are never going to be, who don't have the people gene, into people management, and you'll end up with a much better overall pathway. So think about whether you have multiple pathways for managers and what I'm calling an individual contributor. Think about, is the pathway for promotion or development, or both? So that's where it can be status, so helping people to feel that they are progressing up that route in terms of that talent management, so promotional development. Make sure you know whether there are entry criteria to each element and how you're going to evidence it. So do people have to be performing? Do they have to demonstrate specific competencies? And how would you evaluate that? Is it actually about them having taken part in specific developments? So maybe they have to do a specific piece of training or a qualification before they gain entry to that next level? Or is it about them having relevant experience? So what are those entry criteria there? So rather than just having job titles, how do people access those? The other one is, are people able to self-select, put themselves forward if it's going to be through some sort of next step, or are they nominated? That's an interesting one, because again, that depends on the culture of your organization and how effective the people managers are. And have you got the resource or time to provide aligned development? So there's actually a huge amount to setting something like this up. So I'd always say keep it quite simple, but try and think it right through in order to do that. So Dutton, you're saying, can you combine more than one criteria? You're talking about performance, competence and development opportunities. Then I would say, yes, you definitely could. And absolutely, Shiki, the CIPD people professional map for talent management succession plan is a great idea to use that. And you can obviously use, they've got it for people professionals, haven't they, as well? Here's an example of a specialist career path for an individual contributor that you could, this is just something as a very blunt example. And I say the webinar that I'm going to do in in May, we'll go into this in a bit more detail, how you might line development against it. But it was essentially this, we did this in Siemens actually, because at that time we had lots of engineers who were ending up being people managers, and frankly, they were not great at being people managers. And we realized that what we needed to do is almost put in place a people management amnesty. And when we do that, but therefore some of those people who are managers, they still needed to have that sense of status, and they were still incredibly valuable people for the business. So we needed to put in place some sort of progression. And actually, if you imagine a mirror zig, so you could have the manager's progression map would go here, and it would go in the opposite direction. So you could have this opposite. So effectively, you could have somebody who reaches the dizzy heights of being principal engineer or principal IT person, whatever it might be, was as senior as someone as a director. So there was status, and there were things, and project manager was another one. We had a proper pathway for all the project managers. And it was really about identifying, they had both role-specific competencies and specialist competencies. So those were technical competencies or qualifications, and some which was to do with behavioural competencies as well. So all of this was defined in the background. So the piece here you can see, though, is there was a huge amount of job profiling and job family work that went on in the background to be able to define it. But once it was in place, it was really clear, and then we could align our development against it. So you don't have to overthink this, but then people like the status aligned with it in terms of car and salaries as well. So people could have this actual sense of status. It doesn't have to be this complicated. It can be that you just have titles and development, depending on the size of your business. But certainly having something that is quite clear and simple can be really, really effective. So that was what I wanted to cover in terms of just some thoughts on a talent management strategy, perhaps how we might do this. If anyone's got any questions there in terms of the numbers representing the seniority, the numbers with the do you mean the car bands and things, Ben? Which numbers? Yeah. So basically, as you go up, so if you're an entry-level engineer, you came in and you therefore had to demonstrate that you were able to meet the basic level of the role. And we had a competency framework that went up from level 1 to level 5. So you only had to demonstrate competency level 2 to get up to senior. When you did that, you'd be eligible for salary band 3, which was, and then the banding, and then as you went up it, you'd be able to go into a next banding. So this is quite a traditional large organization, German manufacturing organization. You're also eligible to a car at a certain level. You got up to the next level. I mean, many of you are working in organizations which have bandings, but all this was doing, but very often those bands, they don't necessarily give you the ability to graduate through a specific specialism. And that's the key. Maybe in some, thinking whether the public sector do or not, but the idea of this is allowing people, you retain somebody who's got specialist knowledge who might leave to go and get more money, basically, because they don't feel that they're having any progression, but they're able to progress on through it. So it's giving them that sense. So let's look at some of the questions that are going to come in, and I'll just link in. If you want to read more on succession planning, we've got a white paper on here. Caitlin, what we'll do is if we attach that to, in fact, Caitlin, if you can drop things into the chat, we'll drop. I can see some people are having to drop out at the moment. So we'll drop in links to, sorry, Caitlin, can you answer me? Are we giving people the white paper to send it out, or will we just put them the link? You just want to pop it in for me?
Yeah, I can put it in, but it will also be in the email.
It'll be in the email. Great. So everyone who's having to go, you'll get a link anyway, and you can actually download it from the email. So that goes into more on talent management. But let's open this up to a few questions as well. So talent strategy for a startup. Is it advisable for a startup to have a talent management strategy? Says Doten. Well, interested in anyone else, because I'm sure we've got other startups on here. So this is where the group can comment. So if you do, other startups do comment if you think so, but I would say it is advisable in certain areas. And I've seen some small businesses, and I'm thinking sub 50, having a little career pathway, or it doesn't have to be as complicated, but it's making sure that as a startup, it's really costly to bring people in, and it's really costly to if you lose them, not just in money in terms of recruiting people, in terms of paying people, but it's also really costly because you lose a big hole in the team. So having some sort of retention strategy in place, or it could be an engagement strategy, in fairness, but starting to think of a retention strategy when you're, let's say 50 plus is quite a sensible idea. Any other comments there for anybody who's got who's in a startup position? Do let me know there. How would we, Skip says, how would we assessing talent capabilities, both objective and subjective? So I would say, and that both of you, so Skip and Duet say, how do you move away from subjectiveness and make it more objective and inclusive? So I think you do want to take into account performance. So one of the obvious things to do is actually making sure that you do have an objective performance management process, so that people are being set challenging, stretching objectives, and there's some sort of measure against them. So make sure that your managers are capable of doing that, and make sure that you have a performance element to things. And then the next aspect is you can start with maybe a simple capability or competence framework, which again looks at performance in terms of behaviours. And again, you do need to make sure that managers are skilled in doing that. If you've got a system like Actus, then that helps as well, because you can do it. And you could use something like 360 feedback as a tool to get more objective feedback on behaviours. And then if you want to layer on skills, then again, you could include that in some sort of 360. So really what you have to do is you have to define, maybe I'll put that in the next module, you have to define some criteria that you can evaluate against and presumably rate it. And you have to decide whether you want to have levels to that criteria. And then it's about educating both the individual and the line manager in recognizing the behaviors and skills that match with those criteria. Manuela, how do you start preparing a section for someone who's retiring? I would be inclined to get them to start mentoring. If you've got people who are retiring, one of the things that can happen is that they've got so much skill and experience that they can share with the business. They can also start to go off the boil a bit. So maybe even have a conversation with them about a few people, bringing a few people along. How could they build a little pool of people that they could nurture for the future? Diane is asking about managing expectations, motivation, don't create a very heavy team. Yeah, that I think, Diane, I think is the double-edged sword of doing career paths if you are too small a business. And setting expectations, because actually you want to retain people, and then do you start having to just create titles for the sake of it? An alternative is just making sure you have a really good engagement strategy, making sure that everyone is treated as an individual. The benefit of smaller businesses, and I know, Diane, some of your businesses that you're working with are kind of small enough to maybe to be able to do this, is you can almost look at everybody as an individual, look at their strengths. So you could do something like one of those strength tools and go, how can we utilize this? So you've come into this business as a client engagement person, but actually you've demonstrated that you've got some brilliant talents in project management or I don't know, NLP, and you could actually get people to share those, or you could utilize those. So think creatively about almost we can create roles around individuals rather than artificial career paths. And I think that is something worth considering in a small business, so you don't create, as you say, a top heavy team. Diane, I hope that's helpful. Paolo, 9-box grid. 9-box grid. People don't like being pigeonholed. People love being pigeonholed, Clarity. It depends on your organisation. I think it fits better a larger, more formal organisation in many ways. One of the things I don't like about it is the fact it doesn't always recognise those solid performers. Again, it's a bit elitist. If you can do it and make sure that there are skills and there's something for everybody in each of the 9 boxes, then I think that can work. There is just a way of working out how to, it's more of a way, if you've got a 9-box grid, it's more of a way, and those of you, if you don't know what it is, we write about it in that white paper, about maybe using it as a way to differentiate people's development needs. That's the way I would see it, as what's the right development need for that person at this stage in their career. Self-awareness, says Mark. Oh yeah, definitely, and I think that is true when they talk about potential, but actually and are they motivated? Do they want to? And self-awareness, emotional intelligence, those sort of things are really relevant in senior roles. So Ben's saying, could we arrange a session to share goals and challenges and learn from one another? So I've done a few, maybe we need to try these again. The sort of collaboration focus groups have worked quite nicely. It's often about having a topic where I've had, say, 12 people or less, where you can talk, we can do a topic. We're going to do one on new ways of working. We've done one on appraisals. Ben, if you've got, so I think if anyone's interested in something where we did a session where you can share goals and challenges, whether it's mentoring, whether you want us just to facilitate it and set it up for you. I think it helps if there's a theme potentially there, but so put your suggestions in. The other thing I'd say, guys, and I won't keep you too much longer because I'm sure people want to disappear soon. Any other questions? I'll keep having a look here. If there are other topics that you'd like us to do webinars on or podcasts on, because I'm just revising my future podcast strategy, do let us know. I'd really, really appreciate it, because it's always great to have relevant ones, and that's where this career paths one has come through. Yeah, Angela, some people leaving is not always bad. It does depend on who. How to propose new talent management strategy and get buy-in from a senior management team. Shika, the key is it's got to be relevant with business strategy. So you find out what the pain points are for the board. And if you say, okay, you know, the pain point is that we are losing business to a key competitor, then you need to find out, say, well, what we need is to have people who have those skills and that strength. You've got to make the connection between your talent strategy and the business pain points. And that's the case for anything like an OD strategy or learning. If you want money out of the board, you make a connection. Money, time, focus, priority, it's got to link to the business strategy, and they don't always see it. So we have to make that link overt. That's interesting, Hannah. I haven't come across high performance trait indicator assessments, so I'd be interested to know more about that. Okay, so I think I've got almost down to, oh, is that HPTI? Is that Thomas? Is that what you're talking about? Is it a Thomas one, is it? Do you like that? So people recommend that, do they? Interesting. Great, thank you. So if there's any other questions, please let me know. In terms of our future webinars, I mentioned a couple of times we're talking about development and learning. So we've got Rebecca, my colleague Rebecca's running a session on empowering talent. That is happening on the 25th of March. That is taking this more to the sort of specific individual level. So it's actually really suitable. What we're trying to do is we try to do a webinar each month that's specific to people professionals like this one, and then one that you can also send managers on. You're right. Thank you, Karen. It is May. Typo. Empowering Talent is on the 25th of May. Good spot. Karen Blythe, you've been here before because you've got the same name as my best friend from school, and I know it's not her. And so it is. So it's May. All the links will be on the thing. So if you want to sign up for that, that would be great. So those what's coming. Let us know if you'd like other topics. Caitlin's going to drop a feedback form into the chat. If you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of feedback on how this webinar was, how it compared to previous ones, what you'd like me to do more of in future, that would be great. It will be on the email that comes out to you, but she'll pop it in the chat, and it's a Google Doc, so it will take you 2-3 minutes if you have time to do it now. Hannah, you're very welcome. Really nice to join you. Glad you stumbled across you too. I'm going to go and look at HPTI now as well. All of the links will come out to you, and don't forget, if you're interested in a look at Actus, we've got an open demo happening tomorrow. I think it's at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, so I think it's maybe 1 o'clock. So do feel free to sign up for that and have a look. So we've got lots of different functionality available now. Thanks so much. Really nice of you to join me. Thank you for joining.